What's up, Rebels? Marc LoPresti here. Up next on the Rebels Edge, disaster averted as the bill gets passed to end the partial government shutdown. The market says, so what? What big deal is that? The VIX spikes as the tech sell-off accelerates on concerns that software companies may soon be obsolete. And finally, will Bad Bunny dress in drag on Sunday during the Super Bowl? We'll cover all of that breaking news and more on today's Rebels Edge.
I'm so out of the picture of the mainstream world. I don't even know who this Bad Bunny cat is.
don't even try. Don't, as my daughter would say, don't play my face. Come on, Pete. I don't believe you. I don't believe you.
God's honest truth. Strike me down if I'm telling her to lie. I've heard the name. I just don't know anything about it other than there's a lot of controversy.
First of all, he's from Puerto Rico. So, of course, John and we bump into him all the time on the streets of San Juan. I'm kidding, of course.
Sure.
But really took the music world by storm a few years ago. Broke a record at the Grammys the other day for the first full Spanish language album to win a Grammy. He is a Latino rock star by every estimation. The only thing is, he's pretty outspoken when it comes to his thoughts and stance on President Trump, particularly his immigration policies. So he may appear in drag on Sunday just to make a statement. We'll see. I hope he shaves his legs.
I'll go political, which I never ever go. Just a little bit. As a guy who's been approached to do things in the political world, I will just release one thing. When it starts off with illegal alien, that word alone seems to be something that I think is meaningful. Anyway, forget all that. Let's jump to the Rebels Edge. Let's do a little bit of this macro. And you just brought it up in the cold open, and I'll tell you what. I think that's the biggest thing from a macro perspective that we could find. The fact that the government has done this and they're going to reopen and all the rest of it. I mean, that's something where we really do kind of need to have some of these numbers, the data that's produced and so forth. And when we don't have that, Mark, and by the way, there were some folks out there on some of these poly markets and so forth that were saying, hey, this is going to go this long or this long or this long. Well, it seems like we've shortened that up pretty big. And that was the side that I was leaning on. What do you think about the macro side of things?
Well, listen, as you and I said in our send-off on Friday at the fantastic Active Trader Show in beautiful, cold Miami, Florida, where it was, in fact, raining iguanas, I don't know that I agree with that. I think the market doesn't care. I think the market believes that it's political theater when we have these shutdowns. I think the market believes that Trump is not going to let an extended government shutdown happen this close to the midterms. I think the market believes that these things last a number of days. And I don't think that's really what was behind all of this volatility over the past couple of days. And as you know, Pete, because we talked about it on Friday, I think a lot of this data, whether it's PCE, PCI, especially anything that comes out of the BLS, is antiquated, it's inaccurate, and it's bordering on useless when we look at the accurate real-time data that's available to professional traders like you and me.
Right. No, absolutely right. I'm with you on that. So I'm going to jump to the VIX. I'm going to leave all that poly market type stuff for you. But when I look at the VIX and the fact that we did breach 19 today, that's kind of interesting. Does it make sense? Absolutely it does. The movement that we've been seeing out of both the NASDAQ and the Dow has been pretty extraordinary over the last couple of trading sessions, which is why I think we're seeing the lift that we are seeing. S&P, of course, is what the real read is. But it's amazing because when you just go back not too terribly far, and I look at where we were in January, early January, we were trading 1450 on the VIX in early January. Here we are now trading above 19, and we've pulled back a little bit from there, but nonetheless, there is some volatility into these markets, and it makes total sense. This isn't some sort of a fraud thing of any type. This is exactly what it should be. It should be up here based upon the movements that we are seeing from the S&P 500.
Yeah, I mean, I got to agree with you. And of course, again, harkening back to that great live event we did last week, talking about how important the VIX is and that sort of resistance level at a 20 handle, 19 starts to get me a little bit more nervous. but I think that we were somewhat artificially on the low end of the VIX, even on Friday when we had that massive sell-off in silver. All right, let's talk some tickers, Pete. What do we got?
Well, before we do that, I think you got a spotlight, right? You want to do that?
We do actually. We do have we can hit that right now if you like. Today we have a small cap spotlight. It is a new issuer that we're going to be featuring from time to time here on the show. The company is actually a private company called Real Alloys, RE Alloys, and this is a company that's in the critical mineral space, particularly for critical minerals in magnets. This, of course, being a front of mind and top of news for most everybody, including the president, who just a couple of days ago, I think it was on Thursday or Friday of last week, announcing a $13 billion plus critical mineral reserve, similar to the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. So, Real Alloys is set to merge with a company called Black Box Stocks, the symbol on the NASDAQ there, BLBX. And yesterday, the two companies announcing that Real Alloys, the private target in this particular merger, had signed a deal to access a tremendous amount of rare earth feedstock in Afghanistan. That is where a lot of this stuff is located. Actually, excuse me, in Kazakhstan. The stock was up about 12% on that news yesterday, sold off a little bit today on some profit taking. We're going to be keeping an eye on this one. That is, by the way, in full disclosure, we are compensated for covering this particular name. Your brother and I, proud to have recently joined the advisory board of the private company, and we think that the critical mineral story still has way, way farther to go.
Yep, I hear you on that. All right, we're going to jump to our four stocks now. We're going to start with Uber. Now, this one, when they first delivered the numbers, wow, people started smacking this thing down and they were slapping them further and further. Well, they've recovered from off of that pretty substantially. They were down 6 or 7%. Last I looked, Mark, they were trading close to 3% to the downside still. But why is that? Well, they missed on their earnings in a pretty big way. They were expecting something a lot closer to 80, let's say, and they came up with 71 cents. That's a pretty big miss. That's why it was getting slapped around. But when you start looking at some of the other information out there, you can understand why people are trying to get a little bit off of that low. They did have weak guidance, that's for sure. There's no doubt about that. They talked about, however, the strong demand for these trips and up 22% year over year, 3.8 billion folks. Net income did drop. So there's some good and there's some bad into this. And I think this one makes a bit of sense to me, at least, that, yeah, they smacked it for all the right reasons, but there is something out there. You look at the revenue up 20% year over year and you say, you know what, if they can turn this thing around a little bit, they're in the right area right now. And I think that that's the case. I think they do have competition, but I still think they're the leader in the competition side of things. So what do you think about Uber at this point?
Yeah, I don't feel as bullishly inclined as you do. I think this is the company that in a lot of aspects of their operating model, they have little to no control over rising costs, particularly on the insurance side. You heard the CEO citing some of those things in terms of what's condensing their margins and profitability. You can't get rider costs up much higher. I mean, I don't know if you've taken an Uber in New York City lately, Pete, but sometimes the Uber ride to the airport costs twice as much as the flight. And I'm not exaggerating here by any stretch of the imagination. It's absolutely ridiculous. And they cannot bring prices higher. People are looking to other alternatives in big cities like New York, where the cost of Uber rides has just become so eye-poppingly astronomical. I think the driverless car thing does not portend well for them in the future. You've seen them getting into like the food delivery space. They invested in a company called Serve Robotics that makes those little robots that we see rolling around the streets of New York and Los Angeles, delivering people's Uber Eats in an attempt to diversify their revenue stream, recognizing that the driverless car situation is ahead of us, like the ones we see in Vegas. I'm not a fan of this company, even though it might start to look a little bit attractive at these levels. For me, it's a pass.
Yeah, I hear you. I understand that. I don't know that I'm necessarily bullish, but I can understand why it's not down as much as it was when it started off the day. And I think that's because of the fact that they are having the same kind of demand, but they've got to figure out how can they get this priced the right way. Now, I haven't experienced what you've had at all. As a matter of fact, down in Miami, when I was just with you down there, I got an Uber ride from the airport for about half the price of what everybody else was paying. And it just happened to, pop up that way. But, interesting to see how things do fluctuate along that whole thing. AMD is a big one. Lisa Su is somebody we talk about all the time, right? It's NVIDIA, it's AMD, and that's the conversation. Well, the data center part of things is strong. And she presented things, I think, in a very good way. But they were a little bit short of the expectations when you're looking at the forecast. And I think that's what people are kind of clinging to right now, Mark. You can see this pretty violent drop for the stock. I mean, that's pretty extraordinary. Down 15% last I looked. Do you think right now that this is an overplayed thing because of what they delivered, or do you still like it? I sit there and look at it and I go, these guys are a key element to the whole AI side of things with the chip makers and the demand that exists out there. She talked about data centers and the strength, but there was some numbers out there that I think people just said, well, yeah, but what about this? But is that worth 15% to the downside? I don't know. What do you think?
The answer is no. And look, I've been pretty vocal about this, so this is going to come as no surprise to you. I think there's a lot of self-interested people out there that are looking to pop this perceived AI bubble. They're talking about all of the circular financing. They're talking about all of these ridiculous valuations for the chip makers, NVIDIA, et cetera, that it can't be justified. It's a bubble. It's the dot-com days all over again. I think that is total hogwash for a whole host of different reasons. I think there is demand that is not priced in for AI infrastructure, including chips. AMD is one of the best in the business. Lisa Su, one of the best CEOs in the business, and that's not praise that I personally give out lightly. For anybody that watches us regularly, they know that. And we are in an earnings season. Well, we have been for the last 8 quarters or so here, that you have to give the trifecta. You have to beat on the top, you have to beat on the bottom, and you have to give guidance that even exceeds the rosiness that the street is expecting. So I think it's getting into an oversold situation here. I think we could see this thing recover handily tomorrow, but in the meantime, it is definitely causing a little bit of a technology sell-off as we look here midday on the market.
Yeah, and that's that. The forecast is what everybody was looking at on this one. And you know what? That's what I look at, because quite honestly, it's great to see what the quarter looked like, but you always want to, want more. And when you want more, you want to say, all right, well, what does it look like going forward? What does that look like? And oftentimes when you see stocks that are down and they've crushed it on their earnings, it's because of the fact that maybe the guidance wasn't so good. All right. SLAB is next. That's Silicon Laboratories. This one's pretty interesting. Revenue growth, yep. Sector expansion, yep. They also have a deal with Texas Instruments, which is interesting because that sort of pulls some of what they had to deliver off. But revenue up 34%, that kind of growth year over year is pretty amazing. Nearly $1 billion on that. Stocks up 50% today. I would say that these guys are sitting in a very, very good spot right now. And obviously, this deal with this acquisition coming from Texas Instruments is going to be something that should close this thing up in a really solid way, Mark. But a very, very impressive what they were able to put out there today to the media was pretty daggone impressive. Enough that it's up 50% on the day.
Yeah, notwithstanding, I think they posted operating losses in excess of $70 million. A very, very interesting story, interesting company, one that has not been on my radar, to be very candid. And how many of us remember Texas Instruments? They made the calculators that we all used to use back in high school. They're still around and kicking. Very interesting to see what this company is going to look like on a combined basis after this merger closes. But yes, delivering very, very impressive numbers today.
ENPH is next. This one's pretty daggone interesting. It's up substantially. Last I looked, it was about 35%, whatever it is now, but it's been on an absolute, well, you can tell that it's got all the way up. It's pulled back just a little bit, but still, what a nice return that these guys have had. And I think for all the right reasons. This is a solar company that batteries and all the systems that go with that. But when you look at what they were able to put up, Mark, and the gross margins at 46%, that's pretty damn nice. They raised their guidance, very important, like we were just talking about a little while ago. Momentum for data centers includes some of those in the solar world. That's where they actually sit pretty nicely. Analysts were all over this. They've either given a higher rating for them or they've raised up what their price target is. But across the board, these guys crushed it this quarter. You got to like that. And you know what? I'm a guy who's been pushing back against solar, so maybe I have to rethink this whole thing. But a really, really good quarter for these guys. Unbelievable. And look at that move that we were just looking at on that chart. That's pretty extraordinary.
It really is extraordinary, Pete, and I think a terrific sort of dichotomy illustrated here, where we were just talking about the weakness in the sell-off in AMD on concerns that the AI demand is overhyped and it's a bubble and it's all this other stuff. Yet the same market is willing to bid up Enphase 30% on the same day you're selling off AMD 15%. Make that one make sense. Either you understand that there's demand for AI and data centers. That's why Enphase is putting up these numbers, because as we always say, the energy is not just going to come from oil and gas. It's going to come from solar. It's going to come from renewable sources. It's going to come from those SMRs that we've done so well in the Oklos, the NNEs, all of that. These numbers for an end phase in an overall economic situation has not been favorable to the solar players. The Trump administration last year removing many of those incentives and tax breaks that a lot of the solar companies rely on, which is why you and I, frankly speaking, have been fairly bearish on the sector, historically speaking. But this is a data center story, goddammit. This is 100% a data center story. So the market's got to make up its mind here, Pete. Either we believe that the data center demand is there, and maybe even more so than we think, bid end phase up 30% on the day before we're even at 1 o'clock, or you don't, and you're selling off AMD. Like it makes no sense to me. This, I think, is the more accurate. If you had a look at between these two stocks, which one's getting it right in terms of the AI infrastructure story? It's Enphase. And I'll wrap with this one thing on this topic, Pete. We talked about this last week. 2026, we think, is the year of enterprise AI. That means AI being used at scale by major corporations. Our own internal research reveals that less than 30% of major corporations are currently using AI in a meaningful way at scale within their organizations to improve workflow efficiencies. That means that 70% of the demand for major corporations to use AI is as yet unmet. That means more power, more chips, more need for everything in the AI infrastructure supply chain. Ain't no bubble.
Well, I was going to say that's exactly why we've been responding with everybody else against what everybody else has said, which is, oh yeah, this is a bubble. It's about to pop. Really? Okay. Well, when I hear the demand that everybody seems to talk about when they deliver earnings and so forth, the demand is there. As a matter of fact, the demand is to the point when you look at somebody in the memory space like a Micron Technology where they say we can't even keep up. So right. I look at them, I look at SanDisk, I look at a lot of these guys. I was just on a show yesterday and I was talking about, how about the year to date? I'm not talking about full year, but what does it look like year to date? And you go and look at some of these memory names, they're up anywhere from 50% to almost 200%. So take a look at SanDisk if you want to see who's the king right now, because that's who it is.
Is that the best performer so far this year, Pete? I think it is.
Crushing it. Absolutely crushing it. Yeah. And that's unreal. Year to date. That's not a full year. That's just January 2026. I just want everybody to know that. All right,
Pete,
Mark,
I heard there's some kind of a sporting event on Sunday.
Yeah, there might be a sporting event on Sunday. I think there is. But the crazy part about this whole thing is, it's big, but you know what? It's not quite the teams that basically media would have wanted to have. That being said, you do get West Coast, you do get East Coast, so that's a good thing. I mean, what is the perfect scenario? Well, it's probably a New York team against an LA team, right? I mean, that's what people usually seem to want, those types of things. But that's not the case. I think they're going to still crush it. I think both teams are fantastic. And when we look at this game that's coming up here, I'm going to give you my prediction. My prediction is this, and I'm curious what you have to say. New England's fantastic. I love the coach. Vrabel is a great guy. He's done a magnificent job in a very short term that he's been there, which is a year, this year, and got a great quarterback. They managed to make Drake May into a much better quarterback than he was year one, and the guy's phenomenal, and he's done a great job. They expected that, but he's delivered, so that's been great. Seattle, Sam Darnold, they moved him over there. What it really comes down to is not those quarterbacks, and it doesn't come down to the offense. It comes down to defense, both of which are phenomenal. I mean, New England is up in the top group of defenses in the NFL, call it top 5 in just about every category. Seattle is about top 3 in just about every category. I think the Seattle defense is so suffocating, though, and I think that New England's offensive line has gotten a little worn out towards the end of the year. In the playoffs, they threw a few more interceptions than they would. They gave up more sacks than they normally would. And I think because of that, I start to lean to Seattle. The one issue right now is this. Seattle's offensive coordinator is pretty much a check mark that he's going to be the new Raiders coach. Is that going to be a distraction for the team? Stuff like that is a distraction. How big will it be? Because if he's for sure leaving, and he's already gone through the interviews down there in Las Vegas to be that guy, they just can't announce it yet or haven't announced it yet, but that's what's going to happen. Is that going to get into the head of any of the players? Is there going to be something about the fact that he's leaving that's going to change something? I don't know the answer to that one, but I will say this. I think Seattle, because their defense absolutely suffocates people and they don't have an opportunity to do much of anything, they're that good. I mean, shoot, 25 turnovers is what they put up this year. Pretty damn nice. So that defense is good. They do a great job against the run. They do a great job against the pass. That's why they're so damn good, because they can do it on both sides of the ledger from the offense. I think Seattle takes it. I know that the betting odds are already there, but what do you think? Do you have any thoughts on who you like?
Yeah, I mean, I got to take Seattle as well, Pete, for the same reason in terms of defense. I mean, leading the league, least points allowed. If I got that statistic correctly, I looked at that earlier. I don't think that the departure of the offensive coordinator is going to make that much of a difference. He would probably like to go to Las Vegas with the ring as opposed to not. I think that motivation is in the hearts and minds of every single one of the players. Look, would I have liked to see a New York team in a Super Bowl? Yes, but I mean, hopes and dreams don't make Super Bowls, nor do they make trading strategies. And I think we were done talking about any reasonable chance of a New York team pretty damn early in the season. So yeah, I don't even want to talk about it at this point. But
I don't want to throw gasoline on that, but I'm going to throw something because I know you're a Jets fan, and you know what? You should be. I love the head coach. Here's one problem. There's like 4 or 5 coaches that they need to hire to fill the roster at the Jets right now. I mean, there are so many guys that have gotten pulled away by other teams, right? I mean, new coach, they pull out guys that they like, that they want to work with, and New York is one of those that the Jets that has about 4 or 5 openings right now that they need to hire and get guys in there. So hopefully they get that done sometime in the near future. How about these prop bets? There's some fun ones out there. John, of course, always loves to provide those. I thought we would jump on a little bit of that today, and I'll just throw a few of them out there. What will be the first thing that they want to show? Now, this is getting played in Levi Stadium out there in San Francisco, which is not actually San Francisco, by the way. They're about 30 miles south of San Francisco, but they call it San Francisco. What's the first thing that they show? I'm going to go with the obvious, which is they got to show a video of the Golden Gate. I mean, that's just what people think of when they think of San Francisco. It seems like a schlocky thing to do. I think that's what they're going to do. I think that's the direction they go. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I had not looked at those odds to see what the first opening shot is, but that is the classic go-to when it comes to that part of the world, of course. Yeah. I'm a lot more curious, though, Pete, as I teased in the cold open.
I know
notwithstanding the fact that you claim to not know who he is. Now,
it's not a claim, man.
Folks, listen. I have been in a car with Pete, driving with Bad Bunny on the radio, singing along in my broken Spanish, which when I'm in Miami, es mucho caliente y mucho mejor. So the fact that he's claiming that he does not know who Bad Bunny is, I'm going to call blah on that one. But, he is the big halftime act, Pete, notwithstanding your claim of not knowing who he is. And there's a lot of question about what he may or may not do to give a middle finger to El Donaldo Trumpo in protest of his immigration and aggressive ICE tactics. A lot of people saying he might come out and drag. I think that there's a pretty darn good odds that he will actually do that. The guy is talented as hell, funny as shit. I don't necessarily share his politics, but I am a fan of the Bunny.
Well, I will say this. Number one, in that car was my brother John, not me. We don't look exactly alike. We look similar, but he was the guy singing word for word with him, not me, because I'm telling you, I've heard the name Bad Bunny, but I have no interest at all in the guy. I really don't. And you know what? I think sometimes these guys get it dead wrong when they pick some of these guys to be the singer for the Super Bowl. I mean, this is a good example of that, because I just don't like the whole everything about it. So does he go in a dress? does he expose himself in some way? Maybe his chest or something like that. The Janet Jackson, maybe, when he's out there. I mean, there are some really funny things that are out there that you can bet on right now. I mean,
leave it to
it's crazy
to find him.
How about this one? Here's one that's a little more clean than that one, so we'll get a little bit more out of the dirt or whatever. Mike and Mike. Are they going to call it Mike and Mike because both head coaches' first name is Mike? So are they going to get into a whole thing about that? That's another thing that people, believe it or not, I know that sounds ridiculous, but you can bet on that. Are they going to say Mike and Mike? When are they going to say it? How early into the game has it come or whatever and all that? I don't know. By the way, the one that intrigued me that's actually football related is interesting, because they said, will the Patriots have a linebacker catch a touchdown pass? Now, that's kind of an interesting thing, because there's two ways that can happen. One would be the obvious. He's on defense. He gets an interception and he runs it back and he gets a touchdown, right? The other could be, for whatever reason, and I can't understand why you do this, but maybe they got a linebacker they think is talented enough that they could put him out there. Maybe he's a tight end position. Maybe he's like a wing next to the tight end. I don't know, but there are a couple ways where you could see a linebacker actually catch a pass in the end zone. So that could be pretty interesting. I don't know that that's a great bet, but it's not a terrible bet either.
Pete, if you know off the top of your head, and knowing you, the veritable font of football knowledge, that's probably your new nickname for me, by the way. How many times has that happened in a Super Bowl?
You know what? The interceptions part of it, or fumble return by players, has been extraordinary. I remember going way back to the Pittsburgh one of the many Pittsburgh Super Bowls, when a defensive tackle who was the meanest, baddest man on the planet Earth took a ball and ran it the length of the field. That was pretty amazing. But you know what? Interceptions are going to happen. That's the other thing I'll say. Last thing I'll say about the game is, whoever turns the ball over is going to be the one who gets in trouble. And I, you know what? I know that sounds obvious, but I'll tell you, that's what I think is really going to be. I think they're so evenly matched, except for maybe the defense of Seattle being that much better. But I still think that it comes down to, does Sam Darnold throw a terrible pass that he shouldn't have thrown and blah, 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 or Drake May. Maybe as a young guy, he flings the ball out there and he's trying to press or something like that. That I could see that, and I could see that changing the game. So we'll see how it all plays out. We still got tomorrow to kick this around as well, but it should be a lot of fun, Mark. I'll tell you, thank you very much, by the way, for filling in. God only knows where that brother of mine who usually rides around singing Bad Bunny songs in your car, Lord only knows where he is today, but you know what? You never know.
Well, I know exactly where he is. He's 2 studios away from where I'm sitting right now here, shooting some content for one of our affiliate partners. We have been very hard at work here in beautiful downtown Baltimore, Maryland. Not quite as nice as Miami, although Miami was pretty cold last week. But Pete, if you will let me do a teeny tiny bit of housekeeping, I want to let the Rebels know. Last week, Active Trader Show was pretty kick-ass. We dropped a lot of knowledge. Had Ryan the Mastro calling the bottom and silver right to the minute there. Yeah, it hit the 50-day MA, but he had a really great call. We traded live with the attendees. Justin, 2 of the 3 trades that he did live were up really big, and we took them off, I think, just at the close yesterday. So we're going to be doing it again the next Trader Bootcamp live trading 2-day intensive education session, April 24 and 25. Where, you ask? Chicago. At the CBOE. At the CBOE, where attendees are going to be down on the trading floor with Pete and John, showing you exactly where and how it all started. We're going to trade live. We're going to go to the Chicago floor traders' favorite happy hour jaunts. We're going to throw back a couple of brewskis and drop a hell of a lot of knowledge. We are doing that one in conjunction, we're proud to say, with our friends at the CBOE. So that's the 24th and 25th. Pete, thanks for letting me fill in for your brother.
Absolutely. Nicely done, my man. Always good. Always good. Look forward to another time.
Pleasure's mine.